Alan here with this week's Wisdom You Didn't Ask For but Suddenly Can't Lead Without. And this one is for you if you are a change maker, an advocate, an ally, somebody who is pushing for any kind of change inside the organization where you work. Now, we are clearly in an age of heightened activism in society as a whole for all the right reasons. And you will no doubt have noticed, as I have, that is also being translated into a push for changes inside organizations too. And personally, I think that is really important because businesses can play a very powerful role in helping to drive meaningful societal change, whether that's through simple things like representation in their advertising campaigns or moving their money out of states that sanction voter suppression, for instance. But most importantly, of course, organizations need to be places where everybody can feel that they have a chance to succeed because they feel safe and treated with fairness, respect, and equity. But activism on the streets, it's quite different, isn't it, to activism in the office? And I've noticed recently that we might benefit from making a little bit of a distinction between being an activist and an agent of change or an advocate. And I'm going to make my own distinction here today. To me, being an activist is to be in the public square, fighting for civil rights, for equity, equality, justice, participating in marches and petitions and protests and boycotts and events designed to raise awareness and money, such as like benefit concerts. Remember concerts? Activists drive progress by applying pressure to elected officials and to government entities on issues such as women's rights, Black Lives Matter, voting rights, to give just three fairly recent examples. Being an agent of change, though, is quite different. It happens inside an organization and it's more focused on policies, practices inside those organizations, employees and leaders coming together to create meaningful, lasting change for the betterment of everybody who works there or who wants to. And advocacy can be about simple things like, dress codes or work process, but it can also be and is often about issues of racial and gender equity, for instance. And so employee resource groups are an obvious example of anyone, who's trying to push and challenge and guide a company through a conversation and plans around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's in this last category of work that things get blurry because activists and agents of change are now talking about the same issues of DEI, right? So it's easy to see how advocates, agents of change can end up looking and sounding more like activists because guess what? That's where they're getting their inspiration from, and that's the genesis of their work. But the results can be counterproductive because organizations are not set up to handle activism. They can, in fact, be destroyed by it. And assuming that you care about your colleagues and you want everybody to keep their jobs, it's important to approach change as a collaborative process, making a clear case, for instance, challenging powers that be by all means, but doing so in a way that keeps their minds, their ears, and their hearts open. That's assuming that you still want to get to shore. You got to rock the boat by all means, but don't flip it over. And it takes skill, impulse control, advocacy, presentation, listening, cognitive, emotional empathy. You need to be able to relate to all kinds of people, especially if you disagree with them, and it's hard. This is what it means, though, to be an agent of change. If you have a passionate activist heart, this might feel a bit like pandering sometimes. But understand that the language currency of advocacy is different than that of activism, and that the tactics are different too. I'm not saying pander to sexism, racism, white supremacy at all, ever. Always speak up. You can and you should bring your passion to your work, and that's the good news, but it's very difficult to antagonize and influence at the same time inside an organization. So stay focused, keep your eye on the big picture, but bring people with you. Message me if you disagree, especially because then we can practice our skills together, can't we? That's this week's Wisdom You Didn't Ask For. I'll see you next week.